All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the monthly Spark Talk. My name is Lisa Blue, and I am the Director of Artificial Intelligence Strategies here at Eastern Kentucky University. And I am so glad you could join us today. AI in higher education tends to trigger one of two reactions. This could be amazing, or please no, not one more thing. My job and the whole point of the Spark Talks is to lower the panic and raise the curiosity with practical strategies you can put to work immediately. Each month, we swap quick tips, field tested examples, and realistic approaches for teaching, research, and service. The goal is to save you time, support student readiness for an AI enhanced workplace, and keep our use grounded in ethics and responsibility. Everyone who's registered for today's session will receive a link to the recording once I've had a chance to process it and pretty it up just a bit. I'm pleased today to feature the work of Thomas Stevens, an assistant professor in the Department of Government here at Eastern Kentucky University. I'll be monitoring the chat for Thomas, so if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll bring them to his attention during the presentation. So Thomas, I can't wait to hear about how we can get students to unhide their brain. Can you tell us more?
Thanks very much, Lisa. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Really appreciate your all's time and coming to be able to have this discussion today about artificial intelligence. And I just want to say specifically to Lisa and all of the wonderful work that's being done at artificial intelligence by Lisa and by others at Eastern Kentucky University and universities around the state. All of our collective energy, all of our collective brains put together are going to help us empower students to be able to use AI responsibly and to be able to use it in a way that not only produces good results, but teaches them good process. And that's why we're here today. That's the discussion that we're going to be having. As Lisa mentioned, I'm an assistant professor here at Eastern Kentucky University. Presentation today is Unhiding the Brain, Making Thinking Visible in the Age of AI. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in just a minute. A couple housekeeping matters first. This is my favorite format to teach in. I love online synchronous instruction because there's so much flexibility within Zoom and Microsoft Teams to be able to create breakout rooms, to be able to engage students in small groups, large groups. And so I want to encourage you today, make sure you're familiar with the interface of Zoom. At the bottom of the screen, along the toolbar, you'll see the React button, a heart at the bottom, middle of your screen. Feel free to use that liberally today. If you want to give a thumbs up, if you want to heart, if you want to laugh, if you want to cry, everything is fair game during today's presentation. Likewise, if you need to stop me in my tracks at some point during the presentation, there's also a raise hand function. So feel free to use that. We'll stop, we'll take a detour, we'll let the conversation lead us where it needs to lead us today. Additionally, I want to encourage you to use the chat. Chat is a great place just to say hello to everybody, say how you're feeling this afternoon, and to be able to engage with each other as we walk through this material together and as we begin this discussion with each other. So there will be times during today's presentation where I will prompt you with questions in the chat. And I want you to be ready to respond, to think and to respond in the chat as we work through some of these questions together. So first things first, I figured the best way that we could start a presentation about artificial intelligence is, drum roll, asking some controversial questions to make everybody uncomfortable at the beginning of the presentation. So here's what we'll do to be able to accomplish this. We're using a program here called Slides with Friends. Slides with Friends is a great interactive tool for teaching. I like to use it in my classes. But what it will allow us to do, if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, or if you join our activity with this link that I've just placed in the chat, slideswith.com/open, it will prompt you to enter your first name. It will prompt you to pick an avatar. I will tell you, I'm personally fond of the squirrel avatar, the helicopter emoji. All of these are good options. I'm seeing good options pop up on the screen right now. I encourage you, scan that QR code or use the website option and go to slideswith.com/open. And we will go through some controversial questions today as we begin our discussion of artificial intelligence. So if you missed the QR code, because I'm getting ready to go to our next page, make sure you use this link in the chat. You can jump in and join our game. Everybody ready? Let's do it. All right. Hope everybody's ready for spirited debate because these will tax you today. These questions will tax you. Question 1. How do you pronounce this word? How do you pronounce this word? Multiple choice options here. What do we think? What do we think? How do we pronounce this word? I will tell you, I asked this question in a class earlier this semester, and I got about a 50-50 split between two of these responses. Let's see how our cohort does today. Oh, wow. We've got some GIFs, we've got some GIFs, we've got some GIFs. I like it. We're all over the board. We got a nice distribution if we were going to map this out on a chart. All right, controversial question number 1. Maybe not as controversial, but don't worry, it will get more spicy. When texting, what is the most genuine way for us to laugh? You can see your options on the screen right now. I will tell you this revealed a generational divide in one of my classes, which required me to add a new option I did not even know about. And we've got multiple picks for the laughy cry face. We've got the ha-has, the LOLs, and a couple of skulls. Now, let me just tell you what I was told by some of my Gen Z students. They told me that when I wrote LOL in a text, that I was being passive aggressive and that really didn't mean it was funny. Now, this was news to me because LOL is my go-to. But they told me that the skull is what you say to be able to indicate that you are dead. And that's supposed to mean that something is very, very funny. So you learn something new every day. Hopefully, if you learned nothing else today, that was worth the price of admission. All right, next question. When you're eating cereal, which goes into the bowl first? There's really only one right answer for this, by the way, but we'll see how you do. And the cereal has it. We may have one contrarian that wants to put the milk in first. And you know what? That's okay. You do you. That's my opinion on that. All right. Which one of these is the best Spider-Man or the real Spider-Man? Which one of these is the real Spider-Man? I'm looking in the chat here. Christina mentions that their children taught them about the skull. I had to learn from teenagers. We all learn different every day. Let's see what we've got on Spider-Man. Most people think Tobey Maguire is the real Spider-Man. We got a lot of people that haven't seen a Spider-Man. That's okay. Maybe you can rent the DVD. Can you even rent DVDs anymore? Get on Netflix or whatever and watch that this weekend. All right. Controversial question. Which is the real football? The 50-50 question here. We're all friends. There's no wrong answers. And most people are going with American football. The FOOT football instead of the FUT football. Oh, that's fine. All right. Very controversial. How should a respectable dog wear pants? What do we think? I'll give you a couple options here. Is it all four legs or is it just the hind legs? Difficult question, controversial question. Let's see how we come out on it. All right. we have got multiple people. The majority of the people are saying just the hind legs. I had a very heated argument with some students about this particular question because if all of these are legs, shouldn't they all have a pant? Just my opinion. There's no wrong answers. But love to see your all's input here. Let's shift gears a little bit. What's the first word that comes to your mind when you hear this phrase? AI, artificial intelligence, in higher education. We're going to build a word cloud here. What is the one word that comes to mind when you hear this phrase, AI in higher education? Take a second and think about it. Watching the answers populate here, thinking about some of my immediate reactions, depending on what time of the day you ask me this question, what assignment I've just graded, my opinion could be very different. Let's see what some of our responses are. Feel free to continue responding. It'll add to the word cloud here. Ooh, we've got some good stuff. We've got some good stuff on the board. We've got some uh, we got some statements here that frame this very much in a way of an opportunity. We have others that are framing it much in the way of this could be a problem. Um, Fantastic responses, though. Are there real issues with cheating? Are there real issues with plagiarism? Are there real issues with environmental impact? Absolutely. It's easy for us to uh, give attention and focus to some of the negative consequences of artificial intelligence. On the flip side of the coin, there's some great comments in here about opportunity that could be available with artificial intelligence and how we can harness its power to be able to unlock potential for students who are going to be going into the workforce and working for employers that expect them to have this type of skill. It's transformational. I see some folks say it's inescapable. There are multiple reactions here that are very valid. Somebody said dinosaurs. I don't know if you're willing to share or tell us a little bit about what makes you think of dinosaurs, but if you are, whoever put dinosaurs, feel free to unmute. I'd love to hear the connection between AI and dinosaurs. Any takers?
I sometimes believe our faculty are stuck in the past.
Okay, so not real dinosaurs. I was picturing real dinosaurs, but yes, I understand what you mean, that we have a mindset of not being reactive and being set in our ways and not willing to adapt to new technologies like Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence. Love this. Love the good responses here. All right, this one is not a one word response, it's a one emoji response. If you pull up your text, when you're typing this in, it will give you the option at the bottom of the screen to use an emoji instead of using a word. I encourage you to do that. If you can't find the emoji button, feel free to use a word instead. It'll just generate into our word salad or word cloud. But if you can find the emojis, type in an emoji, and let's see what your one emoji response is to this statement. What emoji best describes faculty conversations about Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, at your institution? What's the one emoji that best describes those conversations? Feel free to drop them in the chat too. If you haven't got it in the word cloud, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Love this. We've got all kinds of reactions all over the board here. We've got folks who are stressed, some who are, their mind is blown. We have people who look maybe a little frightened, maybe a little scared. We see some people that have put the emoji with the dollar signs. Maybe there's opportunities for students to be able to become more marketable, more employable with the artificial intelligence skills that they develop. We see some people that just look like that they're stressed out by artificial intelligence and maybe not sure what to do. I want to validate you all today. I want to validate you. All of these are fair reactions. All of these are fair reactions, and all of these might be reactions that from time to time we as faculty might experience when we encounter artificial intelligence. So I don't think that there's a wrong answer here, but we do have to look for opportunity to continue to be able to develop and harness it. And this is the question I want us to begin to think about. If you had a one word reaction to how Gen AI has changed your role as a faculty member, what would you say? How has it changed your role as a faculty member? What is different as a faculty member today in the age of AI than it would have been previously? in situations when you were operating in a more analog world where we didn't have artificial intelligence that was a tool that students used, that was a tool that was available to us as faculty members? How has it changed your role as a faculty member? And some great responses here. Opportunities for creativity, opportunities for a revolution for the way students learn, productivity increases, efficiency increases. On the other hand, we have faculty that might be skeptical of what AI can do, which is fair. We might have faculty who are concerned about the time maybe that is lost while using artificial intelligence. But at the end of the day, there are opportunities for us to grow. I love the word growth in this word cloud. Operate opportunities for us to become more efficient, more productive in the type of work that we could do if we have a process that allows us to use it in a beneficial way. Last question to frame our discussion today. What student skill do you think is most at risk? What student skill is most at risk with widespread adoption of generative artificial intelligence applications? What one student skill is most at risk with widespread adoption of generative artificial intelligence applications? Watching the progress bar fill up here as people respond. We'll take a look at our word cloud. Critical thinking skills, knowledge creation, productive struggle. Who put productive struggle? Do you mind just to share a little bit if you're able to unmute and tell us what you mean when you say productive struggle?
Yeah, just, learning something new and being uncomfortable in that space where we're growing, right? We don't know everything, but we pull in our resources, and just we sit with that, right? To be able to grow.
I love that. I love the idea of learning and the picture of learning as a struggle that is producing results, a struggle that is advancing us.
Yeah, I use the analogy of powerlifting. I'm a power lifter, right? And so I have to struggle when I'm lifting heavy weight. And so that's my analogy.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you have to have some pain to get the gain. And for students, as they're encountering their learning, we want them to be able to engage with that struggle in a way that is going to be productive for them, that it's leading somewhere. And to be able to get students to embrace process, be able to embrace being in the hard part, being in the hard part where they are struggling through learning concepts, putting together information, and eventually being able to have mastery, to have proficiency. That is our aim as educators. That's what we hope that we're able to lead students to in university settings. So I'm going to share my screen with you again, transition over to PowerPoint. Bear with me for just one moment. Okay. So get my screen situated here. All right. So as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, my name is Thomas Stevens. I am an assistant professor in the paralegal program at Eastern Kentucky University. I can tell you my background is not in academia. My background is as an attorney. I spent 12 years as a litigator practicing in courthouses across the state of Kentucky, trying cases, deposing, taking depositions, taking testimony from people, and first and foremost, trying to solve problems. And so when I think about educating students generally, and when I think about the type of students' outcomes, the outcomes I want for students after they've taken my class, it's I want them to be effective problem solvers. I want them to be able to look at a problem in their community, a problem in their personal life, and especially with respect to my discipline, a legal problem, and be able to have a process that they can work through to solve that problem. And so I tell my students on the first day of our classes, when you've completed this course, you will have tools, you will have processes that if you apply them consistently will allow you to solve problems, help your neighbors, help your communities. That's my goal as an educator. That's why I went from the practice of law to be here at Eastern Kentucky University to be able to teach students, was to empower students to help their communities, help their neighbors, help themselves by learning problem-solving processes. So that inspired this presentation today of unhiding the brain, because it is important for us as educators to be able to lead students down a path where we can uncover the thinking, uncover the brain that's behind the work that they're doing in our classrooms. And so I tell students this frequently as well. I want to see your brain, not literally, but I want to see your brain on your assignments. In feedback that I'm giving them, I'm asking them questions like, how did we get here? Can you show me your work? Can I see your brain to be able to understand the process that led you from point A to point B? So I want to frame the problem for us a little today, or the challenge, maybe is a better way to say this. Generative artificial intelligence is all about product. It's about outcomes, results. And so if we go to Gemini, or we go to ChatGPT, or we go to Copilot, and we ask it a question, it is going to give us an answer. Many times it's going to be a well-reasoned answer, a correct answer, but the problem is that its process is obscured. We do not see the process behind that right answer. And so when students use generative artificial intelligence, unless they're sophisticated as prompt engineers, they're not going to be able to uncover the process that led them to the right learning. And just as Christina said earlier, that productive struggle of applying process is what leads us to proficiency. And so if we are skipping the process part and just going directly to right answers, then students cannot gain proficiency. They will not be able to have mastery of subject matter. When students use generative artificial intelligence, they're trying to get the right answer often. They're trying to score well on the exam question or do well on the assignment. And they're not thinking critically about the inputs, the reasoning, and the methods that are cloaked in an algorithm that ChatGPT or other artificial intelligence is using to be able to get to the right answer. And they are certainly not, in many cases, doing that independent thinking, reasoning, or working through methodology themselves. So that is the risk with artificial intelligence. And I know I don't have to tell this group, this community about the risk and about the potential issues here, but I do think that it's helpful to illustrate a phenomenon that I see with generative artificial intelligence, which I would just call the lucky idiot problem. Now listen, before anybody gets up in arms or anyone gets upset, I'm not calling students idiots, but we're all familiar with this trope. We've seen it in movies, we've seen it in TV. You have somebody like Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, or you've got Mr. Magoo, who has no idea what he's doing, or Gilligan has no idea what he's doing, and yet somehow stumbles upon a correct answer. My absolute favorite example of the lucky idiot is Homer Simpson. Homer walks through his life without any real intention about anything, and miraculously things happen to work out for him. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to hand over part of my Spark Talk today to the esteemed legal scholar, Homer J. Simpson, and allow us to take a look at his process when confronted with a problem that must be solved, his process, and allow us to critique that process in real time. So here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. I'm going to play this video. It's about 90 seconds long. During that 90 seconds, I am going to prompt you with questions in the chat. I'll let you know, you'll hear me, and then you will also see in the chat that I've dropped a question there. I want you to think about and respond to the questions in real time as we work through Homer's process together. Everybody ready? Any thumbs up? Any reactions on the reaction emoji? Are we good to go? Let's try it out.
Thingy that tells you how to work this stuff. The manual. The manual, right. It's as bad as a phone book. Congratulations on your purchase of a Fishinator 1952 slow fish and react.
All right, I'm dropping a question in the chat, guys. So I hit play again. Think about that question. Let me know what you think. Oh no. I'm going to have to stop my share for just a minute because PowerPoint has decided to collapse. So let me reopen PowerPoint. We will reconvene in just a second. I'm seeing some of the comments here, though, in the chat, which I'm loving. Too little, too late. Should have gone to the manual long ago. Yeah, maybe not wait until the nuclear meltdown to be able to go to the manual. Not reading useful info. Certainly that can be a problem too. If we don't have info that's actually going to be instructive, that would certainly be a problem. Bear with me just a second, guys, while I pull this back up, and we will get back to Homer because Homer has more important things to teach us here. We do commend Homer for finding the instructions. That's good. We're proud of Homer for doing that. I'm going to put a couple other questions that I'm going to put in the chat, and we'll hit play on this video again. So bear with me just a moment. All right. Oh, here's the next question I want you to think about as we continue. And I will hit play as I get ready to share my presentation again. My apologies, guys, for the rude interruption of PowerPoint deciding to shut down on me. And here we go. Oh, not gonna let
The thingy that tells you how to work this stuff. The manual. The manual, right. It's as bad as a phone book. Congratulations on your purchase of a Fishinator 1952 slow fission reactor. Don't get to the point, man. Ooh, what's this? Don't! Who'd have thought a nuclear reactor would be so complicated? I don't understand anything. They look up stupid in a dictionary, there'll be a picture of me.
1 minute to core meltdown.
Shut up! Simpson, it's all up to you. It's showtime! Okay, think back to your training.
Homer, this may very well save your life one day. Homer,
Yeah?
please pay attention. This button here controls the emergency override circuit. In the event of a meltdown, push this button and only this button.
Ooh, it's time.
Simpson,
What?
you see which button I'm pushing?
Yeah. Push the button. Got it. This is all your fault. Okay, gotta pick a button. No, 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4. No, wait. Bubblegum. In it is.
15 seconds to core meltdown.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Crisis has been averted. Everything is super.
Thank you, Homer, for saving my plant. With that idiotic rhyming, do you even know what button you push?
Sure, Mo.
Love the response here. Do you even know what button you pushed? He pushed Mo as he did eeny, meeny, miny, mo to be able to figure out his reaction here. So the idea that Homer stumbles into the right answer without having any understanding of his process. I asked you what you think about his problem-solving skills. You can put this in the chat. How did you feel about Homer's class participation? if you remember the portion of the video where he had the Rubik's Cube. How do we feel that his class participation was during the training on the nuclear reactor? Yeah, we got distracted in the chat. Absolutely, Homer was distracted. Asleep at the wheel definitely was going on. Wasn't engaged. Typical. Unfortunately, we may see this sometimes with our students, not engaged, not interested, not paying attention. And so when it comes to the moment of crisis, Homer's able to get to the right answer, but not with any understanding. Zero understanding, stumbles his way into the right answer. I think we can do better. I think our students can do better. I think we can teach them process that will allow them to succeed and not fall into a lucky idiot trope. That if we teach them process, they're not going to be going to a textbook at the midnight hour when the exam is due in 10 minutes, but they will be able to execute process in a way that will consistently get them to right answers. So that's our goal. That idea of unhiding the student brain. And I'll tell you the inspiration for this for me. And looks like my screen is a little bit slow on the internet. Hold on. Lisa, are you able to hear me okay when I talk?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. So the idea of the student brain, I was inspired by this because I was reading the Harry Potter series recently. I was about 20 years behind on this. But there's a passage in there that says, never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain. You can't see where it keeps its brain. And that's been my reaction, my impression, not just with students, but also with artificial intelligence technology. I want to see the student's brain. I want to see the process that's at work behind artificial intelligence to be able to determine whether or not what is happening is real thinking or it is an imitation of thinking. And the way that we do that is by unhiding the student brain, by making their thought process visible. I really encourage anybody that hasn't read John Warner's book, More Than Words, How to Think About Writing in the Age of AI, to pick it up. It's a great read. It's a book that we did in a professional learning community last semester, which I thought was phenomenal. Glad to see some of my colleagues from that PLC on today's call. But because of this book, I was really inspired to lean into process-oriented teaching and learning to the extent where I am less concerned about students in their responses and assessments giving right answers, correct answers, than I am about seeing correct process. Because if we can see their process, we see their brain. We can see the thinking behind what they're doing. And so I'm constantly encouraging students, I want to see your brain. I want to see the process that you're using, which led me to really emphasize this process-oriented teaching style. So what is it? It's an approach that focuses on the journey of acquiring knowledge, not just the end result. And sometimes at the exclusion of the end result. Often in assessment, I will be asking students, I just want to see your process. I don't even care about whether or not you get to a right answer. Because for problem-solving purposes, if students can get process right, then they're going to be able to replicate what they do. And it is far superior than an instructional method where we're just asking for a right answer, where a student could get by with rote memorization or with faking it by using AI tools. When we ask to see the student's process, we're challenging them to engage with the material that we're presenting them with, to think critically about it, and to build connections, develop deeper understanding of concepts and how they're connected to one another. So I'll tell you, practically speaking, how we do this. I want to show you an example of how I would do this in a legal research and writing class. And then I want to give you some additional examples of how you might deploy this in one of your courses to be able to emphasize process instead of emphasizing right results. So in a legal research and writing class, I give students a three-step process to analyze statutes. And what that means is any bill that's been passed by Congress, signed into law, is a statute. Same on the state level. When state legislatures pass bills, they become statutes. And as legal professionals, we constantly have to apply these statutes to specific client legal problems. And so I give students a three-step process. Every single time they see a statute, they're going to work this same three-step process. Students' impulse is to skip steps 1 and 2 of this process and to go directly to conclusion. So step 1, they have to identify elements of the statute by breaking them down into components. The way I explain this to students, you want the statute to be broken down into bite-sized pieces. And then you fact match in step 2. You take the facts from your client situation and you match them to the specific elements of the statute. So we are comparing our client's facts to the statutory elements, and based on that, we get a conclusion. As I said, students always, their first reaction is to skip 1, skip 2, go directly to 3. And my fear is that is going to get worse with increases in artificial intelligence because students are being trained. No, we only want to get to a right answer. We're not worried about process. This requires students to slow down because if you put the same prompt into ChatGPT, it's not necessarily going to give you the process. It's only going to give you the right answer. So let me show you an example of how this looks like in real life. I've talked a lot. Do I have any volunteers that wants to read our client's facts? We've had a client that has walked into our law firm. We are legal problem solvers today. We are going to listen to this client's legal problem. We're going to look at the statute. And then together, we are going to be legal problem solvers by applying process. Great question in the chat before we read this. Are you okay with them using AI to do the process? Absolutely. And I'm going to show you some examples of that in just a bit about how students can still focus on process while using AI and do great job on assignments. So does somebody want to read this to me about our new law firm client named Sally? Any volunteers? Please.
I'll read it.
Thank you, Cindy.
So I'm just reading the bullet points, correct?
That's right.
So your law firm's client, Sally, has been charged with theft after getting a haircut and manicure at the local salon. Sally used a check to pay for these salon services. When she wrote the check, Sally knew that her checking account was empty. She planned to buy some Lucky Lotto scratch-off tickets and then deposit the winnings into her checking account before the check was cashed. But Sally also felt the salon didn't deserve payment because her hairdresser laughed at her hairstyle choice. This made Sally angry. After her appointment, Sally purchased the lottery tickets as planned. Wah wah, but didn't win. Sally's check bounced and the salon remains unpaid for her haircut and manicure.
Cindy, thank you so much. Beautifully read. It's a sad, sad story of our poor client, Sally, who has been charged with a criminal offense. Now, students would be presented with a client problem like this and given a statute. You can see the statute at the bottom of the slide here that they have to apply to this client's legal problem. So they're given Penal Code Section 2397. A person's guilty of theft by deception when they obtain property or services from another without payment by using deception with the intent to deprive them of their property or labor. Students' immediate reaction to this is they would attempt to just give a yes or no. I read the sentence. I think she's guilty. I think she's not guilty. We challenge students to dig deeper. Show me your process by working through the 3 steps that we talked about a moment ago. Identify your elements of that statute. Fact match. Match up facts with each element of the statute. And then, and only then, reach a conclusion. So the first step that students would have to do to show me their process is break down the elements. They would have to look at this statute and be able to identify discrete subparts, a checklist that they're going to be able to go down through and say satisfied, unsatisfied, etc. as they go through the list. And you can see how I've color coded this and broken this down into multiple elements that must be met. All elements must be met in order for this crime to have occurred. Someone has obtained property or services from another person without payment by using deception with intent to deprive. So step one, they have broken the statute down into elements. They've shown me their process. Now, let me show you in practical terms the assignment that students would be doing to show me their process. And I don't show this to you to say this is AI proof, but it is AI resistant in the sense that students can't just offload all their mental effort to ChatGPT or their favorite GenAI app. They have to at least partner with it to be able to start formulating the right responses in the prompt. So we've got our client's facts still on the right side of the screen. And then we have a chart. And students would be responsible, either in a synchronous course or an asynchronous course, this works either way, to be able to complete this chart. To be able to first fill in their elements, which they would have done on the side of the chart. I wouldn't have provided that to them. And then based on their elements, they have to fact match. That's step two. Fact match their relevant client facts with the table that we have on the screen. So anybody in the chat feel comfortable volunteering facts that would match element one? Did Cindy obtain property or services? What facts do we have that say whether or not that element is met? Love it. I'm seeing it already in the chat. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Scott. Getting a haircut and manicure. Absolutely. We have an element met. So we have matched facts to our element of the statute. And students are able to put that in to the chart to be able to start working this process, working their checklist to be able to see if this is true or not. All right. Next element. Were those property and services obtained from another person? Yes, I love it. You're fact matching in the responses here in the chat. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, others that are in the chat. This came from the local salon. So these property or services, in this case, have been obtained from a local salon. Element three, without payment. Do we have any facts to say whether or not payments occurred? Wrote a check bounced, checking account empty. Love this so far. Anything else? Anything else we want to throw in there to fact match? She knew she didn't have money. All of this is good. And it tells us at the end of the prompt that the salon remains unpaid. Salon is unpaid. So we have met another element. We have fact matched for this. Next element. Did Sally use deception? Did Sally use deception? What facts do we have that would suggest that Sally used deception? We've got folks in the chat. Knew that she didn't have money, knowingly acted. She knew when she signed the check, she knew her account was empty. Love this. All great responses. But we can find some information here. Now, here's what I want you to take note of. I've put a couple of different facts in the response here. She did know that her account was empty, but she hoped that she would win the lottery. Now, is there a right answer to this? Yes. But if students considered this first fact, that she knew her account was empty, and said, yes, this is satisfied, this element is satisfied, I'm happy with that. But I am also happy with students acknowledging both of these facts, wrestling with these facts, and saying, she wanted to win the lottery. She thought she would win the lottery. Maybe that means there's no deception here. And deciding that this element is not satisfied. Now, like I said, there is a right answer, and we want students to get to right answers. But if I see this struggle, if I see this wrestling with these facts in the fact matching part of this three-step process, I see their mental process. And if I see their mental process, I know that they are doing the work and they are putting in the mental effort. I am seeing their brain. Next element, with intent to deprive, Matthew lists this one as one as well, that hoping to win the lottery might bear on this intent to deprive. What other facts do we have in there that would tell us whether or not Sally was acting purposefully? Sally was acting with intent. Plan to deposit winnings. That's right. Lottery winnings were going to go in the account. I love Shelley's comment here. She didn't feel the hairdresser deserved the money. Definitely reflects on the intent. Multiple people talking about the fact that Sally feels that they do not deserve payment. All of this would be thrown into the fact matching here for element 5. Was there intent to deprive? Yes, she was angry. Yes, she thought they didn't deserve the money. Winning the lottery is speculative, but as Matthew put in the chat a moment ago, she did hope to win the lottery. We would consider all of those facts and then reach a conclusion. In this conclusion column, we would decide whether each of these elements are met, And by doing that, they can reach a final conclusion of whether the elements are satisfied, whether or not they are guilty in the crime. Regina in the chat asks a great question. Are we really seeing them doing the work? Could they not just upload this prompt to ChatGPT and have ChatGPT do the work for them? They could, but they still have to go through the fact matching themselves. They have to put facts by each element because they're filling out a chart. They have to fill out a chart manually to be able to put the information in. So even if they've borrowed their opinions about this from ChatGPT, they're still at least minimally invested in the struggle here because they're filling out the chart to be able to insert the information that's going to be helpful here. Now, I see other comments in the chat about AI agents and what we can do to combat them or what type of prevention that we could have. We're going to talk about some different types of assignment assessments that we can continue to build, not to be AI proof, but to be AI resistant. If I was giving this in a synchronous class, students absolutely would be able to complete this and there would be no risk of artificial intelligence. In an asynchronous class, there is always the opportunity for students to use generative artificial intelligence, but most likely they are still in the process, especially if on some assignments, I require that student to handwrite the information and scan, put a screenshot or a photograph as the assignment submission. I am seeing that they are in the struggle, whether they want it to be or not, because I see their actual process in the chart. So this is just one example. Give students a process they must follow, whether that's a writing process, an analysis process, a research process, and then ask them to implement it in a way that shows their work. And if we do that, again, we've built assignments that make it difficult for them to offload all of their cognitive effort to generative artificial intelligence. Yes, they can ask ChatGPT for help. Yes, they could ask an AI agent to be able to give input or to be able to fill out a form, but there are ways that we can build the assignment that puts the student in the struggle, so that they are at least having to go through and enter information in to match facts to elements in a question prompt like this. Some other types of process-oriented assignments that we can roll out in our classes, regardless of discipline, to be able to try to get a better understanding of students' thinking and to get students to spend more time, more cognitive energy considering their thinking are the following. First, we can ask students to create a process map or a web. We can ask a student literally in a visual way to map out their process. Again, they may be drawing this for us. We may literally have them drawing bubbles and connecting them with lines to be able to demonstrate for us how they got from point A to point B. I specifically love to use Padlet. I'm sure many of you all are familiar with Padlet and have used lots of different implementations for Padlet. There's a free version that's available to faculty and the public generally. And you can create these types of process webs where students have to construct webs that show exactly how their thinking progressed as they solved the problem. Creating a process web is a great way for us to be able to look under the hood of students' thinking, to be able to see how the engine is working. By creating the process web, we can connect the dots, and we require students to connect the dots of how they have constructed their assignment. So Padlet is a great way for me to do this. I see some other comments in the chat about different ways that you can build a process web or a map. It's a great way to try to look at student thinking, not just student output. I also love to give students the right answer and then have them reverse engineer the process of how they got there. Think of it kind of like Jeopardy. On Jeopardy, where you're given the right answer and you have to come up with the question, that's kind of what we're asking students to do. Instead of putting a priority on right answers and getting to a correct conclusion, I give them the conclusion. I give them the client's legal problem. And again, I'm asking them to reverse engineer. How did we get to that conclusion based on the client problem that we have? How did we come to that conclusion, and have them work backwards to be able to map out the steps? Again, this is not something that's intended to be AI proof, but it is AI resilient, AI resistant, that we are requiring students to be able to show us what they are doing. Now, it was asked earlier in the chat, how can we emphasize process while working with generative artificial intelligence? Well, even on the chart assignment that I showed you earlier, I would have no problem with students using generative AI to be able to complete an assignment like that, as long as they are using it as a tool and not offloading their thinking. So you could do the chart exercise that I showed you earlier, or let's say that you've given them a research assignment. And instead of focusing on output, instead of focusing on what the right answer is that the student was able to achieve, you spend time thinking instead about their trail, their research trail that they followed to get there, the specific prompts that they used. If they used generative artificial intelligence, what are the prompt breadcrumbs? What information, what questions did they feed to the GenAI app to be able to eventually get to a right conclusion? And so when we have an assignment that asks not for a right answer, but for a research trail to show how we would get to a right answer, we're prioritizing process over product. And we see students thinking. We're able to understand students thinking better. The other thing that I love to do with students is giving them the liberty, the freedom to use GenAI on drafting assignments. In my particular discipline, this may be a case brief. They have to read a legal decision and then summarize it. Or they may have to prepare a legal memorandum or a legal brief that would potentially be filed with the court. But in any of these type of applications, I'm asking the students not just to do the drafting with GenAI, but to reflect on what GenAI did. How did it do this? What specific prompts were used, and where was GenAI's information helpful? Where was GenAI's information less than helpful? Did GenAI's attempt at analysis or its facsimile of analysis, did that analysis really capture what the court was saying in the precedent decision? Did that analysis that was generated by ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, Claude, others, did it actually zero in on the most important parts of the legal decision? Did the generative artificial intelligence zero in on the information that's actually helpful to our client? And as any of us know who've used generative artificial intelligence apps frequently, they often struggle with nuance. They often struggle with nuance. And the technologies continue to evolve. The technology will continue to improve. But we want the students to be able to spot the nuance that artificial intelligence misses. And so during this drafting exercise, again, I'm going to be asking them to interrogate the text. I'm going to be asking that they might be reading or summarizing. I'm going to be asking to see their thought process, the questions they've asked, the things that they've wrestled with, to be able to use GenAI as a tool for drafting, not to offload their responsibilities for drafting. So these are a few different ways that we can build into synchronous courses or asynchronous courses methods to be able to see students thinking, whether they are using artificial intelligence or whether they're completing an assignment in a course where we prohibit artificial intelligence. By revealing the process behind the student's work, we're able to emphasize the most important information or the most important part of learning, which is the struggle, which is the becoming, which is them attempting to not just give us a correct answer, get a good grade, get a diploma, but to be able to understand what they're doing, gain proficiency in what they're doing. And eventually, for my students, I want them to go out into the workplace, go out into the real world, and be problem solvers that can help their community, help their neighbors, and help themselves and their families by being proficient with process.
Thomas,
So
we do have
one time, but
we do have one question. Christina wanted to know do you have a sense for which type of AI your students are using? Are they using general Gen AI or the Gen AI built into Lexis, Westlaw, etc.?
yeah, in the legal setting, in a lot of law firms, artificial intelligence has been integrated into Westlaw, into LexisNexis, into other research platforms, and students that have access to that can use it. Here at our university and most universities, we don't have those tools. We have research tools that are more limited and that aren't AI integrated. And so students haven't been able to, at least in my classes, be able to integrate those legal specific AI platforms into their workflow. But just by using standard general artificial intelligence applications, they are able to brainstorm ideas. They're able to start working through some of this process mapping that I was talking about before. But to do that, they have to be good prompt engineers. And as a professor, I really try to emphasize too how we can teach students to give good prompts to AI that will provide useful feedback, and that all the while they're marking their trail, they're mapping their trail of where they've gone with their analysis and their research journey.
Very good. Does anyone else have questions? We've got about 2 minutes left. Feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat.
I just would like to thanks for your presentations and engaging activities. Now I would like to use this as permissions to apply. I'm going to work with other area art and design students. I think this helped them think, and it's helped me to confirm that process that I asked them to do this time of the year. I asked them to do the sketchbook and check with the website of the government, make sure their logo design is not the same like other. So every step of the way got approved, evaluate. So thank you so much for informing this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Fantastic. We have one more quick question. Have you got an example of the resulting work of your students which documents their process?
Do I have an example of student work that I could show?
Well, describe it. We wouldn't show our students' work.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't show you what the student work looks like, but the type of work product we did earlier with the chart, that's the sort of thing that students do for us all the time, and they're able to achieve the learning outcomes that I'm setting for them by working the process and putting it into a chart like that.
All right, fantastic. We are at time. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. I will send out a link to the recording, and Thomas has promised to send us a copy of his slides. And if we can have a link to Homer melting down the nuclear reactor, I'm sure we need that too.
I will. I'll send it.
All right. Thank you all so much. I hope to see you at next month's Spark Talk.